Hey everybody, Robert from Black Belt Gaming. I hope you're doing well. I thought I'd make another entry into my Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition series. Today I'll be talking about Minotaurs and shields. And it goes together in an interesting way, or at least it was interesting to me. Let's start with the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs are rarely encountered, and number appearing ranges between 1 and 8. Back in the days when I regularly played AD&D, we typically usually encountered a single Minotaur, but I'm sure there are situations and certain settings and other things where you might have a whole group of them. Now, armor class is 6. Their hit dice is 6 plus 3, so they have a fair amount of hit points to deal with. They're pretty strong creatures. Number of attacks is 2. And if you're just looking at the stat block, you'll see that the damage for their attacks is either 2 to 8, or 1 to 4, or by weapon type. So if you're a DM and you're just looking at the stat block and you're thinking, well, why would I choose 1 to 4 if I could do 2 to 8? What that's coming to is the height of the opponent that the Minotaur is attacking. So if you look down in the description here, it says that in combat, if an opponent is, let's say, human-sized or taller, they're typically gonna ram or attempt to gore that opponent with their horns or butt them with their head. And this is the 2 to 8 damage. If they are shorter, and you could make a ruling on that, we're talking about dwarves, gnomes, and halflings, or do you want to include elves? It's perhaps your choice, but the shorter races, they typically try to bite, and there you get your 1 to 4. So by weapon type, really what you're looking at with the Minotaur is using a large size weapon. So they can have this huge axe, which uses the statistics of a halberd for human characters to wield. They can also use something like a flail, but it's a larger than normal size flail, doing plus 2 points of damage. And I do believe, with the number of attacks being 2, that they get 2 attacks with these weapons as well. So Minotaurs are very difficult to surprise, so if you're using the surprise rules, rolling a d6, they're only going to be surprised on a 1. A 1 out of 6. They're chaotic evil. They are large creatures. They can actually track you by scent, and they have about a 50% chance of tracking you down. And if you're within sight, if you're within line of sight, they'll pursue you and stay on you. They'll only avoid battle if it's just obvious that they're about to take on something that can destroy them. And typically you're going to find or come across Minotaurs in some sort of labyrinth or wilderness or underground cave system, something like this. And that's where I get to our story today, heading into shields. This particular day, the dungeon master was a guy I've referred to previously as D. D was usually sort of a power gamer player. He was 4 years older than me, and like I said, he was one of the ones that helped teach me the game, but he usually wasn't a dungeon master. But he was this day. We all wanted to play. I was still new to the game, but I did finally have my player's handbook, and that's going to lead to some trouble as I go into the next part about shields. But he was a dungeon master, and we had encountered a Minotaur in somewhat of a underground labyrinth. Okay, I had my player's handbook. I was playing a fighter character, And if you hear any pounding or rattling, that's my 2-year-old daughter outside my room. I think she's playing with a ball. Alright, so I have my fighter character, and I remember having a sword and shield character here. And we had a small group with us that day in this particular adventure, and my character was in the lead. I believe I had more hit points and better armor than anyone else. I had my player's handbook, and I thought, you know, I'm going to start digging into this, learning the rules a little better, learning how things work. Maybe I can play a better game. Maybe I can even better understand how to work around some issues and challenges that are thrown at us by the DM. So as I was reading this, let me first cover the rules as they should be played, and then I'll cover the mistake that I made. Shields in 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons give you +1 to your armor class. They improve your armor class by 1. It doesn't matter if the shield is small, normal sized, or large. You still only get 1 point bonus. What the size does is it determines how many attacks you get that bonus, how many times, or against how many attacks you can use that bonus. So a small shield can only give you the 1 point bonus against a single attack. Normal shields 2 and large shields 3. However, if you're flanked on your non-shield side, like your sword arm side, you don't get the benefit at all. If they attack you from behind, you don't get the benefit of the shield at all. So positioning can be important. So once again, 1 point to your armor class. The size of the shield determines how many attacks that can be worth. So if you have a small shield and you're attacked twice by the Minotaur, the small shield can protect you against one of the attacks but not the other. So your armor class is going to be a little worse with that second attack. As I was reading this, I came to it with assumptions. And I thought that, okay, it gives me a +1 to my armor class. And then it was reading about being able to interpose your shield between yourself and the blow. And I think I misread counted against as maybe countered. And I thought that you could automatically block blows if you could interpose the shield between yourself and the attacker. I had a normal size shield, so I thought if I could interpose that and I wasn't flanked, I thought that I could automatically counter and absorb both of the attacks from this Minotaur. So as the Minotaur approached our characters in this narrow hallway, we couldn't form a formation to fight. I had to be at point in the front. They couldn't get around me. It was too narrow. And the Minotaur was going to hack through each of us one at a time. You know, the DM was ready to take us down. And I said, aha, I have a shield, and I've been reading the player's handbook, and it says da-da-da-da-da. And I threw this out there that the shield would automatically, especially in a situation like this, counter anything that the Minotaur did. And it would cancel his attacks. And of course, people were raising their eyebrows. Other players were like, I don't know if I should say anything because this is actually going to help us survive. And D, the DM that day, was like, that doesn't sound right. And I said, it's right here in the book. And I flashed the text at him and he quickly scanned over it. But mostly he was listening to what I was saying. And D and the other guys that introduced me to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons had come from the more basic edition, and they were still getting used to the AD&D rules, and he thought, well, maybe this is something I didn't see before. And so I managed to convince everybody that my shield was absolutely awesome. So we went through this whole battle. The Minotaur was just bouncing off my shield time and time again. And I was in like the movie 300. I was putting my shield to the side and shoving my sword straight ahead and just hacking away at this Minotaur round after round until we took him down. So we all left that day. I felt particularly empowered as a brand new rules lawyer, and eventually found out that I totally had this wrong and had confused everybody. So just remember, with my story, learn from my failures and mistakes. Make sure you really know something before you disrupt a game like that, because it can really throw the whole thing off. But that's how shields work, and that's how I thought they worked. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. I've got plenty more of AD&D coming your way, and I'll catch you later.